The ReadyLift 1 1/4 inch leveling kit that we have here today is going to be a great low-key option for any 21 and newer Bronco owner who might be looking to level out the stance and make a little bit more room for a larger set of tires. Now the ReadyLift kit will include billet aluminum spacers for both the top and the bottom of your strut assembly and can be had for the high $100 price point. Install, at least according to the site, guys, going to get a solid 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter here. Take a few hours to complete from start to finish, but if you hang with me for a bit, we'll walk you through that job later in the video. So again, this is going to be a solid and low-key option for Bronco owners, including you Badlands and Sasquatch owners looking to get that front end a little bit higher, give you some more ground clearance, and ultimately make some more room for a 35-inch tire with full articulation and basically just level out the look of the truck. Now, once installed, this kit from ReadyLift will easily make room for a 33-inch tire, even a 35-inch tire with full off-road articulation and those crash bars removed. Very important to point that out. Now, you can get a 37 on there. However, I would not advise it for any off-road use, even light fire trail use, because the limited space with this minor front end level would certainly cause some rubbing under hard articulation. Now, that front end level or lift is achieved, like most leveling kits out there, through the use of spacers. Now, unlike larger lifts or levels, this 1 1/4 inch option from ReadyLift is going to utilize a 2-tiered approach, much like a smaller spacer up top here, measuring just about a 1/4 inch high, and then on the bottom you have another spacer of your strut assembly that's about an 1/8 inch high. So altogether, guys, this is going to combine for that 1 1/4 inch of front end level with everything installed. But the ReadyLift kit, again, has been built here in the USA from really nice high quality billet aluminum, all CNC cut, and they do even toss in some brand new hardware in the form of washers and nuts. One thing they do not include are lower strut mount bolts. Now, other kits out there from Rough Country, for instance, will include some brand new strut mount bolts for the bottom, and that's pretty important because ultimately, guys, you do end up beating up these bolts pretty hard in order to remove them from the lower control arm. They are press in place type of bolts. So if you damage them to the point where you can't reuse them, well, then you will need to shop for some new hardware. So just something to keep in mind prior to getting started with the install. Probably not a bad idea to source some fresh lower strut mount bolts for your install. And speaking of that installation, now we want to shift gears and talk a little bit more about the install. Show you what it takes to remove those strut assemblies up front of your 6th gen Bronco and get everything in place. So without further ado, check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown now.
Tools used for this installation: hammer, 15mm ratcheting wrench, 18mm wrench, 10mm, 18mm, 19mm, and 21mm sockets, 1/2 inch impact gun, 3/8 electric impact gun. First thing we're going to do in our removal process, we removed our wheels, we got it up in the air. Now if you're doing this at home, make sure you use a jack stands, and support the vehicle properly. We're going to start by removing our 10mm here that holds our brake hose on, and then we'll go down and start removing our sway bar. I'm going to take my 10mm, remove this bolt here, that holds our brake line on. We'll get that off. Now we'll go and remove the nut that holds on our sway bar. Now I'm going to take my 21mm, I use my impact gun to remove this nut here. If you don't have an impact gun, you can use a long breaker bar on 1/2 inch drive. It'll do the same deal. Now that we have that removed, we're going to take our 15mm and go up top and loosen up the 3 bolts holding the strut in. I'm going to loosen the 3 15mm up top here, but I'm not going to take them off. I'm going to let them on. I'm going to take them pretty far out so that way it holds the strut up in and it doesn't fall down when we get our upper ball joint loose. gonna get it finger loose, but not take it all the way off. All 3 of them are pretty loose. So now we'll go down and remove the 2 bolts holding the bottom of the strut in. So now we're gonna remove the 2 nuts that hold the bottom of the strut in. Now, on our vehicle, we've already replaced our studs with bolts and nuts. It's not a bad idea if you get these out to replace them. It makes for an easier removal down the road if you're gonna put a higher leveling kit on. This is what you're gonna get from the factory. It's a knurled stud, goes through the strut like that, comes down the bottom. To remove this, you're gonna wanna get these bolts loose, or get the nuts loose. That stud and that knurl is gonna be down inside that strut like that. You're gonna wanna put the nut back on, like in that way right there. And you're gonna wanna leave one tight and hammer this with a hammer, give it some smacks, and it'll pop the knurl out of the stud. Then what I would do is put a bolt in place, tighten it up, and do the same thing to the next one. And then once you get these out, like I said, you can replace them like we did with bolts and nuts. It makes it for a lot easier. So now I'm going to remove these with my 18mm and take these 2 out, but I'm not going to take them out completely. I'm just gonna get them loose. Now I'm gonna take my 18mm, which would be what the factory nuts are, and I'm gonna remove the 2 bolts that we put in place here. And I'm gonna just start them just like that. I'll remove the second one. And you're gonna see that the strut, once you do that, will come loose. So next thing we're gonna do is break our upper ball joint loose. Now we're gonna remove this nut here, holding our ball joint on. Then I'm gonna smack with a hammer, break this free. I'm gonna back the nut off enough so that when it comes loose, it doesn't just fly apart, and you'll see what I mean when I hit it. I want to get it to where it's loose. Somewhere in that neighborhood right there. And then I'm gonna take my hammer, like Justin would say, smack it like Babe Ruth. And we broke that loose. And as you see, it didn't like fly down, didn't fly apart. That's why I left the nut on there. Now you'll be able to back the nut off, and it's gonna drop when you do it, but that's just what's gonna happen. So we'll finish taking this apart. And if you feel more comfortable, you can put the vehicle down on the ground, put a jack underneath it, jack up a little bit. It'll hold it from dropping. And once we get this apart, we'll finish taking our tie rod off, and we'll be able to move everything out of the way enough to get the strut out. So now that we have our upper ball joint loose, I'm going to leave the axle nut on. I'm just going to move the spindle where I want it. Just gives me enough room to get the strut out. Some videos you're gonna watch, they're gonna remove the axle nut. You're gonna put it out as far as you can so you don't damage the threads. You're gonna hit it with a hammer. The axle will come loose. The spindle will be more free. You can do that. It's not a problem. I'm not. I'm gonna be able to break my tie rod loose here, and I'll be able to pull this strut right out and put it right back in. I'm just trying to do it to remove as little as possible to get this done. Now we're gonna take our 21mm. We're gonna take this nut off here for a tie rod. We're gonna hit it with a hammer, spread it apart. The reason I'm doing that, it's gonna give me a little bit more room to fish the strut out. So I'm gonna get it loose, but I ain't gonna take it all the way off, just like we did with the rest of them. take my hammer, give it a good smack right there. And now that we have it loose, I'm gonna leave it like that. That's gonna hold my spindle in place after I remove the strut. That way nothing falls down, the axle doesn't come out. I'll put that back on, and then I'll show you the procedure of removing the strut. So now we have everything loose. I'm going to start by taking out the 15 millimeters up top that I left in. Once I got those out, I already removed my two bottom ones. So I have the strut kind of loose. I'm going to remove the tie rod, which is going to give me more clearance to get it out this way. I can lower it down, pull my tie rod out of the way. And fish the strut right out. Once I get the strut out, I'm going to put the tie rod back into place, and that's just going to hold the spindle from moving, and the axle shaft from coming out, and that'll keep everything in place. Now that I have my nut back on, that'll hold everything in place. That won't let the axle pop out. You can repeat the same removal process on the other side when you get ready to do that side. Now that I got the strut off, I'm going to go over some of the parts that come in this kit. First part is the upper top spacer, which is going to slide onto the top of the strut just like that. Second piece in the kit is the bottom, and that goes underneath the strut, and it's going to go through either the studs or the bolts that you decide to put in. This kit also comes with new hardware. The hardware here, these bigger nuts, are for your studs. If you decide to keep them, the three nuts that they have here replace the stock nuts that we took off. So now we have our spacer on. I'm going to take this with us, and we're going to reassemble our strut. Now that we have our spacer on top, we're going to reinstall our strut assembly. I'm going to move my tie rod out of the way so I can get my strut. Now I'm going to start by sticking the top mount up, holding it in place, and starting our new bolts that they gave, or the new nuts that they gave us in the kit. And I'm just going to get them started so it gives it a little movement to hang a little bit so we can move it around. I'm going to re-stick my tie rod back in so it holds our spindle where we want it. Now we'll grab our bottom spacer and start putting our bolts back in. So now that we have our strut assembly up in place, we have our 3 15mm nuts holding it up. I'm going to install our spacer. I'm going to put our two bolts down through, and I'm going to show you how to do that. At this point, if you left the studs and you're pressing them back into your strut, you're going to have to probably loosen your 36mm nut up. That way you get your axle back, gives you a little bit more play. You can pry down on the control arm, which will allow you more leverage to get this in, more clearance. In this case, since we're going to put bolts back in and replace the studs, I'm going to be able to run the bolt up through, lift up a little bit, on the strut assembly. I'm going to start my nut. I'm going to repeat that on the Other side. Now once I have these both started, now we'll install our upper control arm. So now that I have the strut bolts in, if you are doing this on the ground, you're probably going to need your floor jack. And what I'm going to do is jack up on the lower ball joint and help move the spindle up so I can pull down on the control arm and get it started in place. And once you hold down on it, I'm going to start the nut. That's going to hold the control arm in place for now. Also, while I'm doing that, I'm going to put the sway bar nut on. Hold everything in. At this point, you can jack up if you want. You can put pressure to tighten that ball joint up. Now, once we have this done, we will tighten our sway bar, tighten our ball joint, and then install our nut on our tie rod and finish tightening all our hardware up. Now we'll tighten our sway bar nut up. Now if that's tight, we will install our 10 millimeter, put it on here, and then tighten our 15 millimeters up. Now we'll install our 10 millimeter. Holds our brake line up. Now we'll go up and tighten up our 15 millimeters up top. We'll tighten our 15 millimeters up. Now we'll go down and tighten our 18 millimeters up at the bottom of our strut. So now we're going to tighten up our lower bolts here on our strut. Now that we have those tight, we're going to put our nut on our tie rod here. That tightens that up. And then we'll just look it over one more time. Now's a good time, once we have everything assembled, just to double check the suspension. You got everything tight. Go over everything, make sure you didn't miss nothing. I always like to just move the axle shaft just to make sure there's no binding. And once that's done, you're going to want to repeat the same procedure on the other side. Now I'm going to show you how to remove our crash bars on our Bronco. We're going to take the back one and the front one off. That way we can install a bigger tire. You're going to use a 15 millimeter. And we'll just loosen these bolts up. And we'll loosen the back one up. And for this back one, you might have to push the inner fender well in a little bit. It is pretty long to get it out. So if you hold the inner fender well back like that, you should be able to, once you get it all the way out of the threads, remove it, and your crash bar slides right out. Now we'll remove our front crash bar. There's two 15 millimeters here to hold the bumper on, and two 15 millimeters here to hold the crash bar on. I'm going to get in here with my impact gun and with my 15 millimeter. I'm going to loosen them up and I'm going to take them all the way out. Gives me leverage to push the bumper forward to remove the crash bar. Now I'm going to take my 15mm wrench. I'm going to remove the 2 long 15mm bolts. Once I got them out, what I'm going to do is push the bumper forward. And pull the crash bar out. Hey guys, that wraps up our review and install of our ReadyLift 1.25" front leveling kit for 21 to 22 Broncos. Thanks for watching, and for all things Bronco, keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.